In this explainer, we're jumping into a really cool question in bilingualism. How exactly does the brain pull up words from two different languages? This whole process is called lexical access, and we're about to see how it all works.
So here's how we're going to break it down. First, we'll get clear on what bilingual lexical access actually is. Then, we'll dive into this key idea called cross-language activation. To see it in action, we're going to look at some pretty slick evidence from two classic experiments, semantic priming and the Stroop task. And finally, we'll pull it all together for one powerful conclusion about the bilingual mind.
Okay, so first things first, let's get down to the basics. What are we even talking about when we say lexical access for bilinguals?
Basically, lexical access is just how we pull words from our mental dictionary. You could almost think of it like your brain has its own super fast search engine, But for language.
But, of course, for bilinguals, it gets way more interesting. The big question is, how are words from two different languages stored up there? Are they in separate mental file cabinets? Or is everything all mixed together? That's what bilingual lexical representation is all about.
And that leads us to the big puzzle that researchers have been obsessed with for years. I mean, think about it. With double the vocabulary, how on earth does a bilingual speaker pick the one right word in the right language in just a blink of an eye? It's pretty amazing.
Well, it turns out the answer has a lot to do with something called cross-language activation. And here's the absolute biggest takeaway, right up front. You can't just turn off a language. It's not like a switch you can just flick on and off.
Yeah, so study after study has shown that cross-language activation is a real thing. It basically means that when a bilingual person is using, say, English, their other language, let's say Vietnamese, isn't just taking a nap. It's still active in the background. Both languages are on all the time, and that really changes how the brain handles words.
Okay, so that's a pretty big claim, right? How do we actually know this is happening? Well, let's look at our first piece of evidence, which comes from a really neat experiment called semantic priming.
The setup for semantic priming is actually pretty simple. You see one word flash on the screen, then another, and your job is to decide if that second one is a real word. But here's the trick. Your brain is faster at making that decision if the two words are related. Like if you see doctor and then nurse, you'll respond quicker.
So let's walk through it. Step 1. You see a prime word, for example, nurse. Then, right after, you see a target word, like hospital. All you have to do is hit a button as fast as you can to say, yep, hospital is a real word. And because nurse primes your brain for hospital, you're going to be a little bit faster.
Now this is where it gets really mind-blowing for bilinguals. This priming effect actually works across languages. So picture a French-English bilingual. If they see the French word for nurse, infirmière, it actually makes them faster at recognizing the English word hospital. I mean, that's incredible, right? It's solid proof that when you access a concept, your brain activates it in both languages at once.
All right, on to our next piece of evidence, and this one is a classic that really hammers the point home, the Stroop task.
You've probably heard of the Stroop task. It's that famous test where you see a word for a color, like blue, but it's printed in a different color ink, like red. Your job is to say the color of the ink, so red, and ignore the word itself. Sounds easy, but it's surprisingly hard. Your brain automatically reads the word blue, and that creates a little bit of a traffic jam in your head.
So researchers came up with a really smart bilingual version of this. Let's say you're an English-Vietnamese speaker. You see the English word blue written in red ink. But here's the twist. Your job is to name the ink color in Vietnamese. So you have to totally ignore that English word and say doll.
And what did they find? Well, bilinguals find this super difficult. Even when the task is in Vietnamese, their brain just can't ignore the meaning of the English word. That conflict, that interference, is the smoking gun. It proves that the language you're not using is still active and getting in the way.
So, what's the big takeaway from all this? Let's wrap it all up.
The most important thing to remember is this. A bilingual brain can't just operate in one language at a time. You can't just flip a switch and turn off your Vietnamese to focus only on English. Both languages are always online, always active. So let's just quickly recap. Both of a bilingual's languages are always active during processing. We saw evidence for this from semantic priming, where concepts cross from one language to the other. We also saw it with the Stroop task, which showed us that one language can actually interfere with the other. The big picture is that the bilingual mind is constantly and really skillfully managing two live linguistic systems at the same time. It's a pretty incredible feat.
This video is brought to you by the IELTS FOCUS, Zillow, 08-477-05973, an English center specializing in IELTS preparation.